Have you ever been there? You know, that feeling when a big deadline is just rushing towards you and, deep down you're going to need more time.
Oh, absolutely. It's such a common pressure point, especially when it's like an important work project you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. That tension between doing good work and, well, the clock ticking. So today we're actually going to dive into a situation just like that.
We are. We're going to dissect a conversation, really get into the weeds of asking for more time, specifically at work.
Right. And our source for this is it's a dialogue from a YouTube channel. They focus on learning English through, real sounding conversations.
hmm And this particular bit involves a manager talking to an employee, Casey, about a press kit that's running late.
Okay, so a press kit, just so everyone's on the same page, the source explains it's basically a bundle of stuff for the media, right?
Exactly. Pictures, logos, company info, things like that. Stuff you give to journalists.
Gotcha. And in this case, Casey's having trouble getting the photos done for it. And the deadline, well, it was actually, what, a month ago?
Yeah, a whole month has passed, which sets the stage, doesn't it?
It really does. So our plan today isn't just to listen, but to really pull apart the communication here.
Yeah.
What works, what doesn't.
What are the strategies Casey uses, and, what can you listening take away from how she handles this tricky conversation?
Think of it like getting some practical tips for yourself. For whenever you need that extension. Could be work, could be study, even personal stuff.
Yeah, knowing how to talk about time pressure effectively, it's pretty vital.
Okay, so Casey needs more time for these photos. How does she actually start that conversation with her manager?
Well, she leads in quite gently. She says something like, yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. I might need to ask for an extension on that deadline.
I've been meaning to talk to you.
That's interesting.
It signals it's not like a sudden panic, right?
Exactly. It suggests she's been thinking about it.
Hmm.
And she uses the key words right away, extension and deadline. No beating around the bush there.
Right. Direct, but not aggressive. Okay, so how did the manager take it? I seem to remember he wasn't exactly jumping for joy.
No. That's putting it mildly. He comes back pretty strong, pointing out the time elapsed. You've had over a month. Why are things delayed?
Oof. Yeah, that definitely ramps up the pressure. Puts Casey on the spot immediately.
It does. She now has to explain why.
So how does she handle that? Because you need to give reasons, but you also don't want to sound like you're just, making excuses.
Right, and this is where it gets quite insightful. She says, well, the thing is, we ran into a lot of problems. And crucially, she adds, I'm not looking for excuses here.
Ah,
I
okay.
just want to get this finished. I know, and I apologize for the delay, but some things were just beyond my control.
So she apologizes, takes some ownership, but also flags that some things were out of her hands. And that line, I'm not looking for excuses here. Why is
Yeah.
that so effective, do you think?
Well, it's sort of preemptive, isn't it? She's acknowledging what the manager might be thinking. Is this just laziness or poor planning?
Right, she's heading that off.
Exactly. By saying it up front, she tries to build a bit of trust, make him more open to hearing the actual reasons. It frames it as, we're on the same team trying to solve this, rather than, her defending herself.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Setting a collaborative tone. Okay, so she says she ran into problems. Did she get specific?
Oh, yeah, she did. And that's key, too. She mentions having trouble booking the photographer, which sounds like an external issue.
Okay.
Then a team member, Michael, was sick for 3 whole weeks, so couldn't be in the photos.
Wow, 3 weeks is a long time. That definitely impacts things.
For sure. And then the kicker, the design team, apparently lost all the files.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So she had to get the pictures redone completely.
Ouch. Okay, those sound
Huh?
like, well, they sound like pretty solid reasons. Photographer issues, colleague out sick, lost files.
They seem legitimate, right?
Yeah.
These are the kinds of real-world hurdles that you often can't plan for perfectly, things that can genuinely derail a project.
Absolutely. Things largely outside her direct control, as she said.
Hmm.
But did the manager immediately soften up? Did he say, oh, Casey, that's terrible. Take all the time you need?
Not quite. He acknowledges it, but then he gets quite firm again. He says something like, I'm not going to put this off any longer, Casey. I want those photos ASAP.
ASAP.
Right.
So even with valid reasons, the pressure is still on.
Exactly. It highlights that tension, doesn't it? Understanding the why behind a delay versus the business need to just get it done. The manager's priority is still the deliverable.
Yeah, that's a very real dynamic in many workplaces. Okay, so we've seen the interaction. Let's unpack some of that language a bit more. The source pulls out some key terms, starting with, well, deadline.
Right, the foundational word here.
Yeah.
And that the source defines it simply as the last possible date to do something.
Makes sense. Like homework due dates, project completion dates,
Yeah.
the point you can't go past.
Pretty straightforward, yeah. It's that final point in
And
time.
if you can't meet that deadline,
Then you might need the next word, extension, which is defined as moving the deadline to a future date.
so asking for more time, basically.
Exactly. The source points out that direct link can't meet the deadline, might need an extension.
Logical. Now, Casey said, we ran into a lot of problems. The source highlights this phrasing, why ran into specifically.
Yeah, this is a good nuance. Apparently, learners might say, I met some problems, which isn't quite idiomatic for this situation.
Right. Sounds a bit formal or clunky.
Ran into really captures that sense of encountering something unexpectedly, like an obstacle in your path.
Like running into a storm or running into computer trouble, as the source examples show.
Precisely. It implies it wasn't planned, it just sort of happened upon you.
Got it. And the other word was delayed.
Simple one, really, just means late. The opposite it being on time.
Like delayed flights, delayed projects. Okay.
We hear it all the time. Straightforward, but obviously crucial when talking schedules.
Okay, so those are the core vocabulary bits. But the source also picked out some really practical phrases. Let's start with Casey's opener. I've been meaning to talk to you.
Yeah, what does that phrase actually signal? It suggests you've intended to do something for a while, but just haven't gone around to it.
So it softens the approach, makes it seem less like a sudden last-minute thing.
I think so, yeah.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
this has been on my mind. The source gives examples like meaning to call someone or meaning to see a movie. It implies prior intention.
Right, makes the request feel a bit more considered. Okay, what about beyond my control? Casey used that one too.
That's a powerful one. It clearly signals that you couldn't influence or prevent the situation.
Like the examples they give of the weather or like Michael being sick for 3 weeks.
Exactly. Things that are external factors. Using it helps clarify the delay wasn't, your fault or due to lack of effort. It was circumstances.
That's a really important distinction to make sometimes. Okay, and the last phrase here, put this off. The manager used this one, didn't he? I'm not going to put this off any longer.
He did. And it simply means to postpone something. Leave it for later.
Like putting off a meeting or putting off checking emails.
Right. But in the context of a deadline, you have to be a bit careful with it, as the source implies. You don't want to sound like you chose to delay without good reason.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to say, I just put off doing the report. That sounds like procrastination.
Precisely. It's more about explaining why something had to be put off rather than just choosing to delay it.
Makes sense. Context is key. Now, the source suggests listening back to the dialogue again after learning these terms.
Which is great advice. Hearing them in context, in the flow of the conversation, really helps cement the meaning, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Makes it much easier to actually use them yourself later. So, okay, we've looked at the language. Let's zoom out again. Thinking about Casey's reasons, the photographer, Michael's illness, the lost files, do we feel they were, actually valid?
Well, based just on what's in the dialogue, I'd say, yeah, they sound pretty valid. I mean, any one of those could cause a significant delay, let alone all three happening.
Right. Booking external people can be tricky. Losing a key team member for weeks is tough, and losing all your work.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare scenario.
It really is. It doesn't immediately strike you as someone just, slacking off or managing time poorly. It sounds like genuine, unforeseen setbacks.
And here's the flip side.
Mm-hmm.
We also have to think about the boss's perspective. Could he still see them as excuses, even if they're legitimate reasons?
That's a really crucial point, actually. Because in a work context, there's often this line, sometimes a blurry one, between a reason and an excuse.
Yeah.
The manager has his own pressures, right? He needs that press kit. So even if the reasons are valid, his tolerance might be low because the impact of the delay is still the same for him and the company.
So his focus is less on the why and more on the when. Like, okay, I hear you, but when can I have it?
Pretty much. There's always that underlying pressure for results, regardless of the hurdles. So, yeah, he might internally be thinking, is this just a string of bad luck or...
Which kind of brings us to the slightly funnier part. The source mentioned the whole world of excuses people use.
Oh, yes. The classics.
He brought up, my dog ate my homework, which is like the ultimate cliche excuse, isn't it?
It totally is. It's funny because it's so unbelievable, usually.
Usually. Because then didn't one of the speakers in the source say their cat actually did eat their homework once?
Slight chuckle indication, voice only. Yeah, apparently so. Which is just brilliant. It kind of proves the point that sometimes the truth is genuinely stranger, or at least more bizarre, than fiction.
It really does. Makes you wonder. And they mentioned other wild ones too, right? Like alien abduction.
Alien abduction, homework accidentally mailed to Africa. Things that stretch credibility just a little bit.
It's just a tad. But it's relatable, isn't it? We've all probably heard or maybe even used a creative explanation when we were running late for something.
Oh, I'm sure. And the source actually asked their listeners to share their own best excuses on their website, which is a fun way to get people involved.
Definitely taps into that shared experience. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive on asking for time, what are the main takeaways for you?
Well, first, getting comfortable with those core words. Deadline, extension, they're fundamental.
Right.
And second, adding those phrases like, I've been meaning to, beyond my control to your toolkit, knowing when and how to use put this off, these really help you navigate those conversations more smoothly.
Yeah, more professionally, perhaps.
Yeah.
And making sure your reasons sound like reasons, not excuses.
Exactly. And remember, like you said earlier, this isn't just about work.
No, absolutely not. Being able to talk clearly about time constraints, manage expectations, that's useful everywhere. School, family, personal projects, you name it.
It really is a life skill. Which kind of leads to our final thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Okay, what have we got?
In a world that often feels driven by deadlines, how can we get better at managing our time up front? But also, when things do go wrong, how do we communicate about potential delays effectively?
Effectively meaning getting the time you need without causing unnecessary stress or damaging relationships.
Yeah, exactly. How do you provide that necessary context, explain the situation clearly, but avoid, just sounding like you're making excuses?
That's a good question. Finding that balance between explaining the why and focusing on the what next.
It's definitely something worth thinking about next time you feel that deadline pressure creaking up. How can you handle that communication proactively?